Hey friends, one of the interesting people that we meet from the time around when Jesus was born is a priest named Zechariah. Now the big heartache in his and his wife Elizabeth's lives was that they were childless and past childbearing years. But as Zechariah gets to be performing his once-in-a-lifetime ministry highlight, where he gets to burn the incense in the holiest place in the temple, an angel appears and speaks to him and says, guess what, Zechariah? Your prayer's answered. You're going to have a son who'll be the one to prepare the way for Israel to receive the coming Messiah. You can read all about it in Luke chapter 1. But Zechariah says, in essence, yeah, right, sure. How's this going to happen? Me and the missus, we're way too old to be having kids. And the angel says, God sent me to tell you this good news, but because you didn't believe it, you're not going to be able to speak till your baby boy is born. And so he's made mute for 9 months. And he's a priest. He's supposed to be teaching scriptures and speaking words of blessing to people, but he can't speak. And I've read this many times over the years, and you probably have too, and always taken it at face value that Zechariah being struck speechless was a punishment for his unbelief. A couple of days ago, I was reading what someone else had to say about this, and he looks at it from a completely different angle. That Zechariah's silence was really for his good. Maybe kind of like the way naps and timeouts for my 7-year-old grandson, that to him feel like punishments are really gifts for a kid who's just so wound up that he's making himself and everybody else around him miserable. Well, sometimes, friends, that's what it feels like in these weeks leading up to Christmas. We get wound up with so many things we have to do, people we have to connect with. And yes, some of it is exhilarating and God-glorifying. I think of Danny and the musicians and singers preparing for the cantata this Sunday. It's busy, it's stressful, but I'm sure that through it, God will speak to and bless them as well as the congregation. But sometimes, and I dare say for most of us, most of the time, our capacity to really tune in to what God is up to and about in the world and in our lives, it grows best when we get away from busyness and noise that can so dominate this season. Here's the summary of this fella, A.J. Sherrill's on Zechariah. He says this, he says, I no longer believe that God silencing Zechariah was a punishment for unbelief. Rethinking the text, I now believe Zechariah's silence was intended for his good, to increase his capacity to receive the gift of a promised son. Silence invites fullness. Slowing paves the way to growth. Well, friends, this Advent season, I do hope that you get to have many of those noisy, festive times where you really celebrate the coming into the world of the Savior. But also, hope that you'll intentionally make for some timeouts, times to get away from the overscheduling and overspending and overeating and over everything that can come with the season. And to really block out some of that busyness and noise, to open yourself up to really receive again and anew what God did for us and for the world in that first Christmas. Thanks for your time today, friends.